Good morning. There's a young man by the name of Tommy. He lived in a small town. Tommy had a problem. Tommy was a bit of a liar. He liked to stretch the truth. Pretty much anything that he did, you couldn't get an honest word out of him. And it got so bad that his parents finally went to the preacher. And they said, "Preacher, Tommy will not tell the truth. We just cannot get him to tell the truth. Even on something simple, he won't tell the truth." And the preacher said, "Well, let me think about it." About 3 days later, he calls the parents and says, "Can you bring Tommy into my office?" He said, "You all come too." So they make their way down to the church house. And the preacher sets Tommy in a chair and says, "Tommy, let me tell you a story about what happened last Sunday when you all were out of town." He said, "I was sitting up there and I was preaching a sermon, Tommy." He said, "About halfway through my sermon, a big old bear busts through the door. And that bear waddles its way down the aisle, and he sits down right in front of the pulpit." Tommy's eyes are big around as saucers. He said, "Then what happened?" He said, "I'll tell you what happened. The strangest thing. Where that bear had busted through those doors, in came a little chihuahua. That little chihuahua made his way straight to that bear. And that chihuahua jumped on that bear, and he tore that bear to pieces and ate every single bite of that bear. There's nothing left but a grease spot on the floor." Tommy's sitting there, eyes big and wide. He said, "Now, Tommy, do you believe that story?" He said, "Yeah, that's my dog." Sometimes, and I don't think we have an issue, especially as Christians, I don't think we have an issue of outright lying. I don't think that's necessarily a problem in the church. I don't know any of you ought to be a liar. Okay? I don't. I can't say a lie that anybody in here has ever told me. And I've talked to y'all pretty much every week. I don't know of a lie that you've told me. And most of the time, Christians' biggest problem are not the lies, right? The bold, outright, what we call them, bald-faced lies, what we just call them around from. The bald-faced lie when you lie to somebody. And we don't generally have that problem. I think our problem comes in is the details. The details. You see, that's where we Christians get in trouble a little bit, is in the details. Now, I told Brian this morning. Now, I stood back there and purposely, now I considered going to each one of you and telling you a story with a little bit of fib in the middle of it. That's what I considered doing. Just each individual person just telling a story where one detail just did not make any sense to you. Then I was going to stand up here, and then I was going to ask you about that story and ask you if it made you think a little less of me because I gave you a detail that you knew couldn't possibly be true. But then I figured that's probably pushing it just a little bit. So what I did is, I don't normally do this, but I went on AI last night, and I had it make me, from my sermon, I had it make me a picture. I had it make me a picture. Now, if you look at the details of this picture, this is the way the world portrays Satan. Right? And I told Brian back there, I said I had the AI do it. And Brian said, "We just need to replace you." He said, "We can just get AI to preach our sermons for us." But I want you to think for just a moment about the idea, about those minute details that could be missing. Or those minute details that get added to stories that hurt credibility. That hurt the way people look at you when and if they figure out the truth. But also the danger that comes along with it. Very rarely does Satan come at us without overt lies. Very rarely does he do that. He comes with a simple stretching of a truth here, an omission of a fact there, an exaggeration of a detail here. And that's the way that he manipulates mankind. And I want you to remember back in the Garden of Eden, not remember, but remember what you read from the Garden of Eden. I don't think any of y'all were there. But Genesis chapter 3, right, we read the idea, right, the fall of mankind. And it mentions something here. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God said to you, you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the trees of the garden, But the fruit which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die, for God does know that the day you eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and knowing evil. Now, in this particular story, there are two omissions or exaggerations of fact that are presented. Now, the obvious one that we see all the time is what Satan said to the woman. And he said, you shall not die the day that you eat it. Now, he didn't completely lie. The day they ate that fruit, did they just kill over dead? No, he didn't completely lie. What he did was he manipulated the truth. He massaged it just a little bit to where they'll listen. But one detail we often overlook in this that was a problem. I don't know if this is Adam's fault or I don't know if this is Eve's fault. But there's another detail in here that I think led to the problem of her being deceived by Satan. There's one thing she said that was not accurate. God never told them they couldn't touch that tree. He never said that. You'll not find in the Bible where God said, don't touch the tree. What God said was, don't eat it. And yet in her detail, when she was talking to Satan, she added this, and don't touch it. And I can imagine this situation. I don't know this to be true, to make that perfectly clear. I don't know this to be true. But I can imagine Adam and her having a conversation. And Adam says to her, God says we can't eat of this tree. So don't even touch it, or we're going to die. And that's a little detail Adam added into that little conversation that he had with his wife. And then when Satan comes to her and says, no, I'm not allowed to touch it. No, we're not even allowed to touch it. That's not exactly accurate, is it? That's not the whole truth. God never said anything about touching it. He said about eating it. That was the danger. So Satan preyed on her gullibilities because he was subtle. And he exaggerated the truth a little bit. Now, if Satan outright came out here and said, go, eat that tree. Eat that right now. You'll be able to grow wings and fly into the heavens, and you'll be able to create a whole new world yourself. Well, she'd probably look at him like he was stupid. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. That's too far-fetched. So what does he do? He subtly massages the truth. And she buys it. She believes it. She looks at the tree. She sees that it was good for food. It was desirable to make one wise. And then she eats it. And then she gives it to her husband, and he eats it. See, the devil works through the twisting of truth. Generally, and very rarely, is it an outright lie. When we go to the details and when we stretch truth to such a degree to win arguments or to sound smarter than we actually are, to get people to buy into our way of thinking, we're following into the same pitfall that Satan fell into. We're doing the same type of sin that Satan committed on Eve. When we start to massage the truth in order to get people to think of us better than we ought to. You ever had a discussion with somebody and they throw out, well, so-and-so down the street, I went and talked to this person and he's a physicist. And the physicist told me that this, right? We attach people to our arguments when they probably didn't happen. They probably never had that conversation. But you want to be believed, so you'll attack certain details of information that aren't true in order to make yourself appear smarter, or to get people to buy into your argument, or to agree with you in some way. In John 8:44, he told me, and we just studied this a little bit ago, he says, you are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar, and he is the father of it. 2 Corinthians 11:3. It says, but I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. You see, when we do that, we're imitating Satan's tactics in regards to the truth. See, the truth is valuable. And if we change the truth even just a little bit, it becomes less valuable. And we become less influential on other people. We become less able to convince other people of the truth because they don't trust our character. Very rarely, right? We even have these sayings like, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive, right? We have those sorts of sayings that go around out there for a reason. And that's because it's very difficult to remember a lie. It's very difficult to remember the lie that you told. It's a whole lot easier to remember truth. Right? There's whole sciences that are geared around body language and the way people react when they're telling the truth or when they're not telling the truth. Right? That people just study these things. Why is that an issue? Well, because we're such a untruthful society that now we've got to the point that we're going to have to look at people, the way they talk, the way they say it, the way they look, their heart rate, their heartbeat, all these levels, just to see if somebody is telling the truth. You see, for the child of God, that ought not to be the case. People ought not to look at you and be like, is that true? That doesn't seem entirely possible. That doesn't seem entirely right. Something seems off about that story. You see, and a lot of times we do that to ourselves. We do that to ourselves in order to make ourselves look better or look smarter or look more have more ability than we actually have. You see, because the exaggeration, it undermines honesty. It undermines honesty. One of the things I can honestly say is that I do not recall a lie my father ever told me. Now, I'm not saying my dad never lied. I don't know. I don't know that he did. Because I've never had anybody say my dad lied to them. And he's never lied to me. I never knew of a situation where he exaggerated a fact. Not one. And as a result of that, I trust him implicitly. If he says something, I believe what he says immediately. And what I mean by that is if I'm sitting in the house, and I know my dad's not joking, and it's middle of July, my dad comes in and says, son, it's snowing outside. Now, I may go look because I want to see snow in July. But I'm not doing it because I didn't believe that it was snowing. And I wanted to go look. You see, that ought to be the type of level of honesty you as a child of God have. That ought to be the way people trust you because you're so honest and you're forthright in all details. Because any exaggeration undermines the trust that people have in you. And it will hurt your ability to talk to them about God. It will harm your ability to have a conversation about right, about wrong. If you're not a truthful person. And I don't mean truthful in the large things. I mean truthful in the small things. You see, the title of this lesson was The Devil is in the Details. And here's why. Because we as Christians add details to stories that may not be accurate. Or we'll remove details from stories that make us look better. So for instance, if I got an argument with my wife, right, and I present that argument to you all, oh, my wife. Oh, let me tell you what happened. I was sitting there and man, she started yelling at me and she was fussing at me and she threw a pan at my head. Isn't she a horrible person? Oh, y'all are like, man, she's bad. I didn't tell anybody, right? I didn't tell anybody that I'd already thrown that same pan at her first and she just chucking it back at me. I didn't tell anybody all the things that I'd said to her or the damage that I did to her. And here's why. Because I wanted people to be on my side. I wanted them to agree with me. You see, I omitted details. Or I exaggerate the details. But you actually throw a pan through a cup. And the cup's plastic. And empty. But you know, that detail matters. Right? The details matter. And that's where we as Christians have to do better. We have to do better with the details. We have to do better with the honesty in what we're presenting and how we're presenting it. Because, again, we don't want people to what was it David said? Or Nathan said to David. He said, you have given the enemies of God an occasion to reproach him. And what we don't want to do is to cause a black eye to the church. We don't want the church to look bad because of our behavior, because of our untruths. We don't want God to look bad because of something that I said or something that I did. The Bible says lying lips are an abomination to the God, but they that deal truly are his delight. You know, one of the things I can honestly say, I'll use Luke, he's here as an example. I didn't worry if Luke was telling the truth or not. And I told Luke this just the other day. I said, he would be the worst liar on the planet. He is just simply not good at it. He's not good at it. He's honest to a fault. Even if it harmed him, he'd be honest. And I'll give you an example. We'd be driving down the road, and I'd tell the kids, and this is what I mean by honest, forthright in his dealings. We'd be driving down the road, and the kids would be acting a fool in the back seat. And I'm mad, and I can't reach around and get them because the car's too big, so I can't reach them. And I told them, I said, y'all remind me when we get home to bust your tails. That's what I told the kids. Now, my memory is like a goldfish. By the time we get home, I've already forgotten. Every single time, without fail, up walks this little butterball, and he says, "Dad, don't forget to spank us." He waddled right up to him. Rebecca can attest to it. Every single time I said that, he would come and tell Katie'd be so mad she could spit. But he did it every single time. As a result, if he told me something, he'd come and say, "Sissy did this," I'm more likely to believe it. Because he would do things knowing he would get in trouble. And he would be honest with them. Right? Me as a Christian, I have a responsibility to you. I have a responsibility to you to present you with the truth. If I don't want you to know something, I simply won't tell you. But if I'm deciding to tell you something, I owe you the truth when I'm telling you that. And you owe me the truth. You owe the world the truth in all of your dealings. Not part of it, not some of it. Because again, exaggeration undermines honesty. It undermines integrity. He says, "Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another." Adding extra details to the story, right? It's lying dressed up as storytelling. That's what it is. It's a lie. It's a lie when we exaggerate. It's a lie when we stretch that truth just a little bit. God calls his people to be straightforward in their dealings, in their speech. Resist the temptation to stretch that. I know it makes you feel better when somebody looks at you and be like, "Wow," right? And again, the best example, right, is that fisherman. Man, by the time that fisherman's told that story for the 5th time about that fish he caught, that thing's grew into a whale. Right? It's grown into a whale. We're not talking about silly little things like that where, guys will kid with each other. We're talking about dealing honestly. But I want you to consider that. He said, "Let your communication be yes and no. For whatsoever is more than these comes from the devil." And the last one, I'm going to rush through my phone and start to buzz and tell me it's time to be quiet. Truth builds trust. Exaggeration destroys it. Exaggeration and dishonesty eventually erode relationships. They erode relationships. And it's sad. It's sad to watch a relationship erode because dishonesty of one partner or another. And when you're married, it's even worse. Because you all are stuck together. And now you're with somebody you can't fully trust. You don't know if every detail they're telling you is completely accurate. You don't know if you're getting all the information, part of the information, or very little of the information if you don't have that relationship of trust with each other. And most of those problems of communication of trust are our own fault. And it's not because, again, especially at first, we were trying to be deceitful. It was because we were trying to look better. We were trying to prop ourselves up. We were trying to get them to do something we wanted them to do, to influence them in some way. Proverbs 10:9, "He that walks uprightly walks surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known." What does that mean? It means eventually you're going to be found out. You can't hide those things forever. Colossians chapter 3, verse 9 says, "Lie not to one another, seeing that you put off the old man with his deeds." And the 15th Psalm 1 through 2. "Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill?" Notice, "He that walks uprightly, works righteousness, and speaks the truth in his heart." One of the beautiful things about having a relationship with Christians is you know who you can believe, you know who you can trust. I had a friend, my buddy Brad. One of the best buddies that I had, he committed suicide a few years ago. But I'll tell you, he wouldn't tell me the truth to save his life. If I was doing something wrong, he wouldn't mention it. He would go right along with it, and we both get in trouble. And my mom ended up blaming him. Because no way her baby would do that. It was always his fault. But later on, he used to call me. He got in the military. And, it changed him. He was in the war twice. Every time he'd call, I'd ask him about the church. Son, when you go to church, when you get that child, that baby in church. He knew the truth. I made sure he knew the truth. And I tried to tell him about it. But I just think, could I have done more earlier? Before the damage was done, before the PTSD stepped in, could I have done more? When I wasn't worried about him being mad at me because I was telling him something he didn't like to hear. Could I have done better in sharing the truth with him? Would that have changed the end? I don't know. I don't know. Nobody does. Only God knows if that would have done any different. So what I'm encouraging you to do is be honest with your family. Be honest with your friends. Be honest with your neighbors. Because your influence matters. The way people view you matters. Not just to you. It matters to God. It matters to your church family. It matters to your earthly family. Everybody wants to have somebody they feel like they can trust and that will tell them the truth when they need it. And that's our responsibility as Christians, is to always be truthful. Truth is a very fragile thing. The devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. He twisted God's words in the garden. He tempts us to exaggerate, to make ourselves look better. And he knows when our words lose credibility, we also lose our ability to influence others. He knows that. So what can we do? What can you do? Really shortly, I want you to examine your words. Before you say it, think. Think before you speak. Commit to being honest, even if it's going to cause you a little bit of pain because you did something wrong. And build character that lasts. Let your word reflect that integrity. And let them honor God. Now, I'm going to give you the truth about salvation. You cannot go to heaven if you don't go through Jesus. That's just a fact. Jesus said, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. That's a fact. If you don't hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized, you don't even get into the family of God. But if you're in the family of God and you're not faithful to God, you can't go to heaven. God's not going to accept it. That's the truth. That's the whole truth. Whether you accept it or not, it's entirely up to you. But I encourage you to think about it again. We stand and while we sing.